What's the quickest you've ever seen a new coworker get fired? A guy refusing to wear safety gear or PPE on his first day. He flat out said no to the supervisor, who then fired him. He didn't even make it to the first coffee break. If he was that adamant about not wearing safety gear, it wasn't a good sign. Nope, just nope. I can't tell you how many times I've had some debris thump off my safety glasses or face shield at high velocity. So fast, you're actually blinking or reacting after the actual thump. Not wearing PPE is a great way to lose eyeballs. I have a small farm. We occasionally rent a wood chipper to clear out the brush and trimmings and such. We hire one person a few times a year to help. Last time, I told him if he's within 10 feet of the chipper or a chainsaw, glasses and earplugs. Dude said he's fine doing the raking and whatever. My business partner was like, I don't get why you're so strict. He feeds a branch into the machine and instantly gets kickback that hits him square in the glasses hard enough to scratch them. He doesn't ask me questions about why I'm so strict anymore. Kid came in on his first day thinking he could boss everyone around since he just finished culinary school, strike 1. Caught him later that day vaping in the prep area of the kitchen, strike 2. He asked on his second day if he could leave for 30 minutes to make a drug deal. Needless to say, that was strike 3. What a loser. You don't ask your boss if you can leave work to make a drug deal. You tell your boss that you're leaving work to make a drug deal. Or cut him in as a downstream distributor. Now you're his boss. Vaping in the prep area? What the fuck? That's what the walk-in is for. Back in the mid-1990s, I had hired a guy for senior Unix systems administration role. It was made quite clear in the posted job description, the interview process, and on his first day that this role would be required to be on call a few nights per month on a rotating basis with the other Unix admins. The salary reflected that as well. This was a 6-figure position. He was issued a company laptop and a cell phone for his on-call work that could be done from home. As part of the onboarding process, our Unix lead admin wanted this guy to shadow him on his on-call evening so that he could see how processes differed in the OFAUs. It was his second day on the job. That evening, I happened to be working a bit late and the help desk calls me saying they've got an issue that needs to be escalated to the Unix team and asking if they've got the right number for the new guy because it's just ringing and going to a default voicemail mailbox. I tell them to call the lead admin to get him working on the issue and that I'll contact the new guy myself. I call. Same thing, voicemail. Multiple times. I fish out his employment docs that are all still sitting on my desk and find his home phone number. I call and get about 3 words out of my mouth when he responds, "Why the fuck are you calling me at home?" And hangs up. A bit in disbelief, I look back at the paperwork and verify, yes, this asterisk is asterisk his phone number, and try it again, thinking maybe he'd mistaken me for someone else. I receive a similar bit of vitriol and I hang up. I contact the lead admin and inform him he won't be having the new guy join him that night or any other. We immediately killed all of his system access and his door card, and HR was waiting for him at the reception area first thing in the morning. That's one way to fumble a really pleasant job. 6 figures in the 90s was a sweet deal. 6 figures now is a sweet deal. 6 figures in the 90s is the goddamn lottery. Within the first 2 hours of training with me, she asks where she can go and have a smoke. I tell her just outside there's a smoking area. She proceeds to walk outside in front of all the supervisors, lights up the biggest blunt and openly smokes it. She got walked out 5 minutes later. She was probably like, this place is hella chilled, right up until she got the can. Worked at a place where you couldn't be colorblind because you were reading schematics and identifying connectors of varying different colors. There was hundreds of tiny connectors in one array. Somehow, by the grace of God, this guy got hired. Either they forgot to implement the CB test or he successfully guessed his way through it. He trains for a week and is put onto the line to build $20,000 cables for fucking missiles. His very first connector he spent all day on, soldering and connecting and signing the paperwork and the steps, gave it to QC for inspection. It was one of the most fucked up examples of a connector anyone had seen. Next day, guy admits he's colorblind and whether he can keep the job. He's let go because he cost the company $20,000. The connector was put on display an hour to drive home the importance of sticking to hiring procedures. Hired my friend's sister as a hostess at our restaurant. She called off for her first shift 3 hours later telling me that she was having a tough period. 30 minutes into her dinner shift, she started posting pics on Instagram of her being at a party in Canada. We live in New York. Fired her via Insta. Never even worked, then tried to claim unemployment, then had her father call me and try to threaten me into rehiring here. She was 34. You hired Mona Lisa Saperstein? When I worked in data entry, there was a tricycle on our office floor, just added as a relaxed bit of fun by the managers, who were all very chill people. One of the girls that got hired around the same time as me would, instead of working, just ride the tricycle around the office all day, every day. When we all showed up in the morning, she wouldn't even log into her computer, she would just get right on the tricycle and ride around talking to people until she left to take her lunch break. The day she got fired, she had to be escorted out of the building because she was screaming about "You're targeting me unfairly, LOL." Okay, this is my favorite one. I feel you're only here for the tricycle. All you do is eat quickly so you can get back to the tricycle. This guy shows up, the VP is gloating how great and brilliant he is, blah blah blah. First day, doesn't come in until 10 a.m. Next day same deal, like working from 10 to 12 then leaving. Meanwhile they flew him on a business trip leaving Wednesday, and supposed to come back Friday. At the last second he rebooked himself on a midnight flight. Meanwhile on the Friday flight back at the last second he was like, "Oh, I have to take a different flight," and he just disappeared. What Mr. Mysterious didn't realize is most of us used to work at his previous employer. Someone sent us a text, "Hey, I thought you hired blah blah blah, he's making copies right now." Turns out he was working 2 jobs. These are both science tech companies with not that strict NDAs, but you can't work at a potential competitor simultaneously. He was fired from both jobs. I worked with a guy who was working 2 different jobs in the same building. He would leave floor 5 for a while, head to floor 7 to get in some FaceTime, then back again. He got away with it for 7 months before he got caught. 7 months is honestly pretty impressive. Orientation second day. He's to sit in a conference room and read through binders of important info. Our boss walks out and closes the door. It has a window with blinds open to see through. Going about our day, and the boss asks us why the conference door's locked and blinds closed. Nobody is sure, so they get security to open the door to see this fucking guy kick back with the lights off asleep. He had closed the blinds and locked the door. Of course he was out there that day. I was at my job for like 3 years, and I once slept through my alarm clock and didn't show up until 11 a.m. We started at roughly 7. I am salary, but I thought for sure I was going to get written up or reprimanded. Not to sound self-congratulatory or anything, but I feel like I am a good worker and my performance reviews have all been very positive. It's just for context. I went right to my boss and apologized profusely. He cracked up, thought it was hilarious, and he told me he figured I either slept through my alarm or something happened to me. I didn't get in any trouble, he just told me not to make a habit of it, but he never let me live it down. I bought a new alarm clock right after work. Yeah, it happens. I have found that if you have an overall good track record you can get away with a slip-up every now and then. As a teenager, I worked at a bowling alley. Within an hour, a coworker was fired for dropping a ball on the foot of a complaining patron. I would have made them a manager. During their onboarding training, they stole my boss's wallet on camera. 1 hour in. Small family company that in my lifetime, 34 years, went from 3 to 80 employees. One woman has been there 30 years and almost feels like a family member. Her daughter struggled with mental issues in high school, and in therapy it came out that she had been sexually abused as a kid by an older kid. Others corroborated the story. Because it was never an official charge, that's the type of thing that doesn't show up on a background check. A few years pass, her daughter goes to college, meets a great guy, gets engaged, her life is going well. And I hire a new warehouse worker. I'm doing his onboarding and bring him to the office for introductions. The mom's face drops. She pulls me aside. I had hired the abuser. I told him an unforeseen conflict had come up and I wouldn't contest unemployment. Those are the types of situations they don't really prepare you for in management. Law enforcement agency, dispatcher trainee hired as a favor to their parent who was friends with the head of the agency. Guy, who was already annoying, bragged and showed off that he was sexting an underage female, even showing it to sworn officers. Went quickly from employee to client. I once saw a new coworker get fired on their first day during lunch. They loudly bragged about how they lied on their resume to get the job. Unfortunately, they didn't realize the boss was sitting right behind them. By the time we got back to the office, their desk was already cleared out. They were gone before we even finished our afternoon coffee. It is just insane how stupid some people are. She called the first day and said her grandmother died. Called the next day and said her car wouldn't start. Called the third day and said her blow dryer broke so she couldn't dry her hair. Never made it to work. Hired a guy after 2 interviews. Personable, well-dressed, very experienced for the role. Background, drug test, all good. First day of work, no show, no call. End of the day he calls and says he is so sorry, he can't believe he got it wrong. There was a mix-up in the days he thought he was working. He's supposed to start on a Monday. I said, well, not a good start, but I guess stuff happens. See you tomorrow. He thanks me profusely. Second day, no show, no call. He comes in personally right before closing and begs me not to fire him. He has a family to support, he really needs the job and it's perfect for him, etc. Against my better judgment, I said okay, but if you don't show up tomorrow, don't bother contacting me again. Again, he thanks me profusely, says I can count on him. Next day, no call, no show. Never heard from him again. We hired an IT guy who was just well. Weird. Didn't seem to do much, but was always out and about taking to people. Whatever, not my department. Then I heard he got fired. He was asked to help the CEO with his computer. The guy walked into the executive offices, acted weird and like he knew everyone, rude and inappropriate to the secretaries, then walked into the CEO's office and took one look at his computer and said, no wonder it's not working, Macs are shit. Spent 10 minutes ripping into the CEO about his poor choice of computer and complaining about his job, then got asked to leave. Never saw him again after that. I worked on an IT help desk, it was me and another guy. He quit because there was no room for growth. They hired this guy who supposedly had 25 years of experience in IT. I was tasked with training this guy. He was an older guy and was so deaf he couldn't hear the phone ringing. I had to show him how to do the same things over and over again, like how to install a printer. I even made training documentation, but instead of reading that, he would just ask me to show him. He was a high school football coach on the side and that's all he talked about. After a week I went to the boss and said this guy is useless to me. The boss sat with him for 2 hours at his desk and he was fired the next day. I felt bad, the guy lost his job, but he was not absorbing any info and I was doing 2 jobs. I worked a mall job in the 1990s at electronics boutique. Pokemon had just come out and we got this new guy for Christmas help who was just the strangest person ever. His first shift he just sat behind the counter opening up packs of Pokemon cards, and when confronted he yelled, "I am going to pay for them." Duh! He was walked out by the manager about 15 seconds later. That was a really dumb kid. Day 4 of orientation. I got hired onto a trucking company after CDL school. They had 5 days of orientation and it took place at their headquarters that was several states away. You could either have them fly you there or you could drive yourself and they would cover your expenses. Also, the company would put you up at a hotel, pay your food costs, and provide transportation to the headquarters. I didn't even think it was possible to get fired at orientation. All you have to do is show up and pretend to pay attention. This one guy drove himself there, I think he lived about 800 miles away. On the first day of orientation, he tells anyone who'll listen that he forgot to keep his receipts and he'd better get reimbursed. I think I'd rather eat the costs than announce to everyone how stupid I am. On the second day, he slept in and missed the shuttle and ended up driving himself. On the third day, he missed the shuttle, yet again, and was over an hour late. Worse than that, he fell asleep during orientation. I knew he was done for when the instructor angrily woke him up and asked for his full name. On day 4, he showed up on time, but his fate was sealed. When I was at the hotel later that night having a cigarette, I saw him loading his stuff into his car. I asked him what happened and, yep, got canned. I can't say I blame them. I'll be the first to admit that trucking isn't the hardest job, but being on time, paying attention, and getting adequate rest are very big keys to success. They probably made the right move. I felt bad for the guy, though. He essentially drove 800 miles to get fired and then drove 800 miles back. That had to feel like a long trip. I warned them not to hire her. She worked at a bank, and 2 weeks after opening an account for my 15-year-old son, she looked him up on Facebook and sent him a friend request. He doesn't even know her. Now she was applying for a job at a high school. Day 1 after work? Threw a party with said high schoolers. Fired. I warned them. I work in a government archives facility. The new guy brought food into the work area on his first day, even though there are signs everywhere saying you can only eat in the break room. And it's just common sense. But the boss gave him the benefit of the doubt and just gave him a warning. Couple of days later he was eating at his desk again. Bye-bye. Don't know if he was arrogant or just an airhead, but he definitely didn't need to be around 18th century documents. First shift he immediately started following the high school girls around and inviting them over to his house or to give them rides. Fired that day. Thank God management took it seriously for once. Guy came in and got certified on the first half of the job. We put him in a forklift for part 2 and he went to his car on break. Came back drunk to the point of being obvious. That's when I found out we have a breathalyzer on site. Great part, they made him call a friend for a ride. They drove out of sight, immediately turned around and came back. Dude sprinted into our parking lot and drove his car away. We had to call the cops because he technically left work in a vehicle while drunk. I work in a kitchen and literally just yesterday, new guy start at 5 a.m, claims to have 20+ years experience, gets frustrated that he is struggling with some basic recipes, slams the oven door and breaks it, then walked out at 6:30 a.m. I would be lying if I said I haven't witnessed this more than once at all the different places I've cooked at. I used to work as a deckhand for a tugboat company on the Mississippi River. The amount of people that would take jobs like that who were deathly afraid of water was staggering. There was a mandatory 2-week training period for all new employees, but about 1/3 of them never made it past their first week. 1 second you're on a boat heading to your first job, and then the new guy is freaking out telling the captain to turn the boat around and head back to the dock.